Sometimes the people you trust most are the ones who steal your dreams, but truth has a way of surfacing when you least expect it. My name is Dr. Elena Rodriguez, and this is the story of how my coworker plagiarized 5 years of my groundbreaking solar research, got published in Nature, and how a single email to a journal editor changed everything. But to understand how we got here, we need to start at the beginning. Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from, and if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed, because tomorrow I've saved something extra special for you. I grew up in the desert outskirts of Phoenix, Arizona, where my Mexican-American family had worked their way up from field laborers to small business owners. My parents ran a successful landscaping company, and my 3 older brothers all joined the family business after high school. There was an expectation that I would follow the same path, maybe handle the business side with my good grades, but definitely stay close to home and contribute to what we had built together. Instead, I spent my afternoons on our roof building crude solar collectors out of cardboard boxes and black paint, trying to heat water for my mother's garden. While my brothers learned about irrigation systems and desert plants, I was obsessed with capturing sunlight and turning it into usable energy. Every summer day in that blazing Arizona heat, I saw opportunity where others saw hardship. My mother would find me up there with my makeshift experiments, my dark hair pulled back under an old baseball cap, taking notes in a composition notebook. "Mija," she would call up to me, "come help with the real work. These science projects won't put food on the table." But I was convinced that understanding how to harness the sun's power efficiently could change everything, not just for our family, but for everyone living in energy poverty around the world. The tension in my household wasn't dramatic like you see in movies. It was the quiet kind that builds over years of small disappointments and misunderstood priorities. When I announced my intention to study materials engineering with a focus on photovoltaic technology, my father sat me down at our kitchen table, his calloused hands folded in front of him. "Elena, we saved money for your education so you could have opportunities we never had," he said in his careful English, the words heavy with years of sacrifice. "But engineering school is expensive, and for what? To work for someone else when you could be building something with your family?" I looked at him across that table, seeing the worry lines around his eyes, the way his shoulders carried the weight of providing for all of us. "Papa, what if I could create technology that makes energy cheaper for families like ours? What if I could help people who can't afford their electric bills?" He shook his head slowly. "Elena, you're dreaming about things that are too big. Focus on what's real, what's right in front of you." But I couldn't let go of those dreams. At Arizona State University, I finally found professors who understood my vision. Dr. Angela Chen, my material science advisor, saw something in my approach to photovoltaic efficiency that others had missed. While most students focused on incremental improvements to existing solar cell technology, I was fascinated by the fundamental problem of energy conversion waste. During my sophomore year, I had been working on a project analyzing perovskite crystal structures when I noticed something unusual. Traditional solar cells lost significant energy during the conversion process, but there was a pattern in the crystal lattice formations that suggested a different approach entirely. Instead of trying to perfect existing technology, what if we could create a hybrid system that captured and redirected the lost energy? Late nights in the lab became my routine. While other students were at parties or studying for exams, I was growing crystal samples and testing conductivity patterns. My roommate Jessica thought I was becoming antisocial, but I felt like I was on the verge of something important. The data was showing that certain crystal arrangements could increase energy conversion efficiency by nearly 40% compared to traditional silicon-based cells. Dr. Chen was intrigued by my preliminary results. "Elena, if your calculations are correct, this could represent a significant breakthrough in affordable solar technology," she told me one evening as we reviewed my latest experiments. "But you need to be careful about documenting everything. Research at this level attracts attention, both good and bad." I didn't fully understand what she meant at the time. I was just excited that someone finally believed in my work. My family remained skeptical when I called home with updates about my research. My brother Miguel would always ask the same question: "When are you going to graduate and get a real job?" The family business was expanding and they needed help with contracts and management. Every conversation felt like a gentle tug toward home, toward the practical world they understood. But I was determined to prove that my solar research could make a real difference. During my junior year, I applied for a summer internship at the National Renewable Energy Laboratory in Golden, Colorado. The competition was fierce, hundreds of applications for just 20 spots. But my work on crystal lattice efficiency caught the attention of the selection committee. That summer in Colorado changed everything. Working alongside leading researchers in photovoltaic technology, I refined my approach and began developing what would later become my signature method for creating hybrid perovskite silicon solar cells. The efficiency gains were consistent and reproducible. More importantly, the manufacturing process could be scaled affordably, making high-efficiency solar power accessible to communities that have been priced out of renewable energy. Dr. James Morrison, the lead researcher at NARL, became my mentor that summer. He was a brilliant scientist with 20 years of experience in the field, but also someone who understood the importance of making technology accessible to underserved communities. Alina, he told me during one of our weekly meetings, your work has the potential to democratize solar energy. But remember, breakthrough research makes you vulnerable. Always keep detailed records of your work and be selective about who you trust with your most important findings. I nodded, thinking he was just giving general advice about academic research. I had no idea how prophetic would his words become. When I returned to Arizona State for my senior year, I was more focused than ever. My crystal lattice research had evolved into a comprehensive approach to creating affordable, high-efficiency solar cells. I spent countless hours in the lab, perfecting the manufacturing process and documenting every step of my methodology. The results were extraordinary. Solar cells that could generate 43% more energy than traditional panels, while costing only 15% more to produce. My family's attitude began to shift when local news stations started covering my research. Suddenly, the science project they had seen as a distraction was being discussed as potentially revolutionary technology. My mother called me after seeing a segment on the evening news. "Miha, we saw you on TV," she said, her voice filled with a pride I had never heard before. "Maybe we didn't understand what you were doing all this time." But even as recognition grew, I remained focused on the work itself. I believed that good research would speak for itself, that scientific integrity was the foundation of everything I was trying to accomplish. I was methodical about documenting my processes, keeping detailed lab notebooks and backing up all my digital files. What I didn't realize was that this very thoroughness would become crucial in ways I never imagined. As I prepared for graduate school applications, Dr. Chen helped me compile my research into a comprehensive portfolio. The work was strong enough to earn me acceptance into several top-tier PhD programs, including MIT, Stanford, and Caltech. I chose Caltech for their renowned materials science department and the opportunity to work with Dr. Sarah Williams, a leading expert in photovoltaic technology.
The night before I left Arizona for graduate school, I sat on my childhood roof one last time, looking out over the desert landscape that had inspired my solar research. The sun was setting, painting the sky in brilliant oranges and purples, and I felt a deep sense of purpose. I was finally ready to take my research to the next level, to develop technology that could change how the world thinks about renewable energy. I had no way of knowing that within 2 years, someone I trusted would steal everything I had worked for, or that a single email would eventually expose their deception and vindicate 5 years of my life's work. Caltech's materials science department was everything I had dreamed of, and more intimidating than I had prepared for. The steel laboratory building housed some of the most advanced photovoltaic research equipment in the world, and I felt like I was stepping into the future every time I walked through those glass doors. My first week, I was assigned to Dr. Sarah Williams' research group, along with 12 other graduate students from around the globe. That's where I met David Chen, a third-year PhD student from Vancouver who had already published 2 papers on solar cell optimization. David was charismatic in the way that academic overachievers often are, with an easy confidence that made him popular among both faculty and students. He had dark hair that always looked perfectly disheveled, wore expensive glasses that he claimed were just for reading, and spoke about research with the kind of passion that made you want to collaborate with him immediately. During our first group meeting, Dr. Williams outlined the lab's current projects and research priorities. "We're particularly interested in breakthrough approaches to efficiency improvements," she explained, looking around the conference table at all of us. Incremental advances are valuable, but what we really need are paradigm shifts in how we think about energy conversion. When she asked each of us to briefly describe our research interests, I presented my work on hybrid perovskite silicon solar cells and the efficiency gains I had achieved at Arizona State. David was sitting directly across from me, and I noticed how intently he listened, taking notes and asking detailed follow-up questions about my crystal lattice methodology. "That's fascinating, Elena," he said after my presentation. "I've been working on efficiency optimization from a completely different angle, but I think there might be some interesting overlap between our approaches. Would you be interested in discussing potential collaboration?" I was thrilled. David had already established himself in the department, and the possibility of working with someone who understood the technical challenges I was facing felt like exactly what I needed to take my research to the next level. We started meeting regularly at the campus coffee shop, discussing everything from crystal growth techniques to the economic implications of affordable solar technology. David was an excellent listener and asked thoughtful questions that pushed me to think more deeply about my work. He seemed genuinely excited about the potential applications of my hybrid cell design, especially for developing countries where energy access remained limited. "Elena, this could revolutionize how we think about renewable energy deployment," he told me one afternoon as we reviewed my latest experimental data. "The cost-efficiency ratio you're achieving is unlike anything I've seen in the literature." Our collaboration began informally, with David providing feedback on my experimental design and helping me navigate the department's bureaucracy. He introduced me to key faculty members, helped me secure access to advanced equipment, and even assisted with some of the more tedious data analysis tasks that my research required. I was grateful for his support and impressed by his willingness to contribute to work that wasn't directly related to his own thesis project. As my research progressed, I achieved even more impressive results than I had anticipated. The hybrid perovskite silicon cells I was developing consistently showed efficiency improvements of 45 to 50% over traditional silicon cells, with manufacturing costs that remained surprisingly manageable. The breakthrough came when I discovered a specific crystal orientation technique that stabilized the perovskite layer, eliminating the degradation issues that had plagued previous attempts at similar technology. Dr. Williams was ecstatic about the results. "Elena, this is exactly the kind of paradigm shift we've been hoping for," she told me during one of our weekly meetings. "I think you should consider submitting this work to Nature. The implications for renewable energy adoption could be enormous." I spent months preparing the manuscript, documenting every aspect of my methodology with meticulous care. David continued to provide feedback and support throughout the writing process. He helped me refine the technical language, suggested additional experiments to strengthen my conclusions, and even offered to review the final draft before submission. "I want to make sure this gets the attention it deserves," he told me as I handed him the completed manuscript. "Your work is too important to risk any technical errors or unclear explanations." I was touched by his dedication to my success. David spent several days reviewing the paper, asking detailed questions about specific procedures, and suggesting minor revisions to improve clarity. His feedback was invaluable, and I incorporated most of his suggestions into the final version that I submitted to Nature in March of my second year. The peer review process for Nature is notoriously rigorous and slow. Months passed without any word from the journal, which Dr. Williams assured me was completely normal for such a prestigious publication. I continued my research, working on refinements to the manufacturing process and exploring potential applications for large-scale deployment. David and I maintained our regular coffee meetings, though he seemed increasingly busy with his own research as his graduation deadline approached. He was working on what he described as optimization strategies for next-generation photovoltaic systems, but he was always vague about the specific details of his approach. "I'm still in the early stages," he would say when I asked about his progress. "Nothing as groundbreaking as your hybrid cell work, but hopefully it will contribute something meaningful to the field." In November, nearly 8 months after I had submitted my manuscript to Nature, I received an email that changed everything. The subject line read, "Manuscript Decision, NMAT-2019-18-487. My heart raced as I opened the message, expecting either acceptance or revision requests. Instead, I found a brief note from the editor. "Dear Dr. Rodriguez, Thank you for your submission to Nature Materials. Unfortunately, we must decline to publish your manuscript as we have recently published very similar work addressing identical research questions with comparable methodologies. Please see the attached reference for the published article. Sincerely, Dr. Michael Thompson, Associate Editor. The attached reference made my blood run cold. The title was High Efficiency Hybrid Perovskite Silicon Solar Cells, a Novel Approach to Affordable Renewable Energy. The author was David Chen. The publication date was just 2 weeks earlier. I downloaded the full article with trembling hands, scanning through methodology that was virtually identical to my own work. The crystal orientation technique, the specific perovskite formulations, even the manufacturing cost analysis, everything was there. David had taken my research, refined the presentation slightly, and published it under his own name. The betrayal felt physical, like someone had knocked the wind out of me. I sat in my apartment staring at my computer screen, reading my own work presented as David's breakthrough discovery. The acknowledgement section thanked Dr. Williams and several lab members for valuable discussions and feedback, but my name was nowhere to be found. I called Dr. Williams immediately, my voice shaking as I explained what had happened. There was a long silence on the other end of the line before she responded. Elena, this is extremely serious. If what you're telling me is accurate, this represents not just plagiarism, but a complete violation of research ethics. Do you have documentation of your original work? I spent the next several hours gathering evidence. My lab notebooks, digital files, email records with Dr. Williams about my progress, even photographs of my early experiments.
Preparing and narrating this story took us a lot of time, so if you are enjoying it, subscribe to our channel. It means a lot to us. Now back to the story.
Everything was time-stamped and dated, creating an irrefutable timeline that demonstrated my priority in developing the hybrid cell technology. The next morning, I confronted David directly. I found him in the lab preparing what looked like celebration champagne with several other graduate students. "Congratulations, David," I said, my voice carefully controlled. "I saw your Nature publication. Interesting how similar it is to the work I've been doing for the past 3 years." His face went pale, but he recovered quickly. "Elena, I know there are some similarities, but scientific discovery often happens in parallel. I've been working on perovskite optimization for years, long before you arrived at Caltech." "Really?" I pulled out my phone and showed him a photograph of my original manuscript draft. "Because this is my submission to Nature from 8 months ago. The same methodology, the same crystal orientation technique, even the same cost analysis approach." Other students in the lab had stopped their conversations and were listening. David looked around nervously before stepping closer to me. "Elena, I think you're misunderstanding the situation. Collaboration in science means ideas build on each other. I helped you develop some of these concepts." "You helped me refine the presentation," I replied firmly. "But the fundamental research, the breakthrough discoveries, the years of experimental work, that was mine. And you know it." David's expression hardened. "I think you need to be very careful about making accusations you can't prove. I have a signed publication, and you have what? A rejected manuscript and some old lab notes?" But David had made a crucial mistake. In his eagerness to publish my work, he had failed to realize that academic publishing creates a permanent record of submission dates, review processes, and editorial correspondence. And Dr. Williams, as an established faculty member with connections throughout the field, had ways of investigating that David hadn't anticipated. Within days, Dr. Williams had contacted the Nature editor directly, providing documentation of my original submission and raising formal concerns about potential misconduct. The journal immediately launched an investigation, and David's celebration quickly turned into damage control as the department began its own inquiry into research ethics violations. I had trusted David completely, shared my most important work with him, and believed we were collaborating as fellow scientists pursuing knowledge for the greater good. Instead, he had stolen years of my life's work and nearly destroyed my academic career in the process. But as I gathered evidence and prepared to fight for the truth, I began to realize that sometimes betrayal reveals not just the character of those who wrong you, but the strength you never knew you possessed. The investigation moved faster than anyone expected. Dr. Michael Thompson, the Nature Materials editor, responded to Dr. Williams' inquiry within 48 hours, and his email contained information that would completely vindicate my work. The journal had indeed received my original submission 8 months earlier, and their internal records showed that my manuscript had been under peer review when David submitted his nearly identical paper. Dr. Thompson's email was detailed and damning. Dr. Williams, upon reviewing our submission records, we have discovered that Dr. Rodriguez's manuscript was received on March 15th and had completed the first round of peer review by September. Dr. Chen's submission was received on October 3rd, 6 months after Dr. Rodriguez's original work. The similarities between the manuscripts are not coincidental overlaps. They are virtually identical methodologies and findings. We take plagiarism extremely seriously and are immediately retracting Dr. Chen's publication. I read that email 3 times before the reality sank in. Not only was my priority established beyond question, but one of the world's most prestigious scientific journals was taking decisive action to correct the record. Dr. Thompson included copies of the original peer reviews of my work, which were overwhelmingly positive and recommended publication with minor revisions. The department's ethics committee launched their own investigation immediately. Dr. Williams served as my advocate throughout the process, helping me organize the extensive documentation that proved my original research. My lab notebooks from Arizona State, time-stamped digital files, email correspondence with mentors, even the photographs I had taken of early experimental setups, everything built an ironclad case for my intellectual property. David's defense crumbled quickly once the evidence was presented. He initially tried to claim that his work was independently developed, but the investigation revealed that he had accessed my digital files multiple times after I had shared them for his feedback. Computer forensics showed that he had copied not just my experimental data, but also my analysis algorithms and even sections of my written methodology. The confrontation came during a formal hearing with the department's ethics board. David sat across a conference table from me, flanked by a university-appointed advisor, while I presented my case with Dr. Williams by my side. The evidence was overwhelming, and David's explanations became increasingly desperate as each piece of documentation was revealed. I may have inadvertently incorporated some of Elena's ideas, he finally admitted, but my research built upon those concepts in significant ways. The committee chair, Dr. Robert Chen, no relation to David, responded immediately. Mr. Chen, the methodology described in your published paper is not building upon Dr. Rodriguez's work. It is Dr. Rodriguez's work. You have violated fundamental principles of academic integrity. Within a week, the department announced David's expulsion from the PhD program. His published paper was formally retracted from Nature Materials with a detailed explanation of the plagiarism that would forever associate his name with academic misconduct. The university also launched a broader investigation into whether David had plagiarized other work during his time in the program. But the most satisfying moment came when Nature Materials contacted me directly to fast-track publication of my original research. Dr. Thompson personally oversaw the final review process, and my paper, Revolutionary Efficiency Improvements in Perovskite Silicon Hybrid Solar Cells, A Pathway to Affordable Renewable Energy, was published just 6 weeks after David's retraction. The response from the scientific community was immediate and overwhelming. Researchers from around the world reached out to collaborate, venture capital firms inquired about licensing opportunities, and renewable energy companies wanted to discuss implementation strategies. My inbox filled with congratulations from colleagues, interview requests from science journalists, and invitations to present my work at international conferences.
The breakthrough moment came when Dr. Jennifer Liu from the International Solar Energy Society contacted me about presenting my research at their annual summit in Berlin. Dr. Rodriguez, your work represents exactly the kind of innovation our industry needs, she said during our video call. We would like you to deliver the keynote address about democratizing solar technology. Standing on that stage in Berlin, looking out at an audience of the world's leading renewable energy experts, I felt a profound sense of vindication, not just for the plagiarism battle I had won, but for every moment of doubt I had faced about pursuing unconventional research. The presentation hall was packed with scientists, engineers, and policymakers who understood the implications of affordable, high-efficiency solar technology. 5 years ago, I was a graduate student from Arizona with a crazy idea about crystal lattices. I began, clicking to my first slide showing the dramatic efficiency improvements my hybrid cells achieved. Today, we're here to discuss how that idea can transform global energy access. For the next hour, I walked them through not just the technical breakthroughs, but the vision behind the work, solar technology that could finally serve communities that had been priced out of renewable energy. The audience response was electric. During the question period, Dr. Amara Singh from the Indian Institute of Technology stood up and said, "Dr. Rodriguez, your cost efficiency ratios suggest that solar installations could become viable in rural communities across the developing world. When can we begin pilot programs?" That question led to partnerships I had never imagined. Within months, my hybrid solar cell technology was being tested in villages across 3 continents. The Gates Foundation funded initial deployments in sub-Saharan Africa, while the Inter-American Development Bank supported installations throughout Latin America. Seeing my childhood dreams of democratizing solar energy become reality was more rewarding than any academic recognition. My family's transformation was equally profound. My parents flew to Berlin for my keynote presentation, their first trip outside the United States. Watching them in the audience, my mother wearing her best dress and my father in a suit he had bought specifically for the occasion, I realized how far we had all traveled from those afternoons when they worried about my roof experiments. After my presentation, my father approached me with tears in his eyes. "Elena, we never understood what you were trying to accomplish," he said in Spanish, his voice thick with emotion. "But seeing you up there, explaining how your work will help families like the ones we grew up with, now we understand. You weren't just studying science, you were studying hope." The legal aftermath of David's plagiarism continued for months. The university's investigation revealed that he had also appropriated research from 2 other graduate students during his time in the program. His academic career was effectively over, and he faced potential civil litigation from multiple parties. But I found that as my own work gained recognition, I thought about David less and less. His betrayal had been devastating, but it had also revealed the strength of my research and the support system I had built. Dr. Williams became not just my mentor, but my collaborator as we worked to scale up production of the hybrid solar cells. She often reminded me that surviving academic plagiarism had made me a more careful and strategic researcher. "Elena, what happened with David taught you to protect your work, but it also taught you to fight for what's right," she said during one of our planning meetings for the Berlin pilot project. The real validation came in the form of letters from communities where my solar technology was being implemented. A teacher from a village school in Kenya wrote to tell me that reliable electricity had allowed them to extend classes into the evening and provide computer access for their students. An engineer from rural Mexico described how affordable solar installations were enabling small businesses to operate more efficiently and create jobs. Today, as I prepare for another international conference where I'll present the latest developments in accessible solar technology, I keep those letters on my desk as reminders of why the work matters. David's plagiarism could have ended my academic career, but instead it forced me to fight harder for recognition and ultimately led to partnerships that are changing how the world thinks about renewable energy. The boy who used to email me technical questions after my presentations now leads his own research team developing next-generation solar storage systems. When I see young scientists facing their own challenges with research integrity or academic politics, I share my story as proof that persistence and documentation can overcome even the most devastating betrayals. Sometimes, the people who try to steal your dreams end up proving how valuable those dreams really are. David thought my research was worth destroying his own career to claim, and in doing so, he demonstrated to the entire scientific community just how revolutionary my work truly was. My hybrid solar cells are now installed in over 30 countries, bringing affordable electricity to communities that had never had reliable power access. Every time I see data showing another successful installation, another family with lights for the first time, another school with computers, I'm reminded that the best response to betrayal is not revenge, but success. The future I envisioned from my childhood roof in Phoenix is becoming reality, one solar panel at a time, and no amount of plagiarism could ever steal that away. 10 years have passed since that investigation turned my life upside down, and the world looks different now. My solar technology has evolved far beyond what I imagined in those early Caltech days. The hybrid perovskite silicon cells have been refined through countless iterations, and manufacturing costs have dropped by 70% while efficiency continues to climb. Last month, I received an email that brought everything full circle. It was from Maria Santos, a young engineering student from Guatemala whose village had been one of our first pilot sites. She wrote to tell me that the solar installation we provided had inspired her to pursue renewable energy research, and she had just been accepted to MIT with a full scholarship. Dr. Rodriguez, you probably don't remember our small village, her message began, but your solar panels changed everything for us. I was 12 when they were installed, and watching our community transform gave me a purpose I never knew existed. I want to continue your work to bring clean energy to even more places that need it. I stared at that email for a long time, remembering my own journey from a curious kid on a roof in Phoenix to someone whose work was inspiring the next generation of scientists. Maria's village was just one of thousands now powered by technology that almost never saw the light of day because of one person's greed. The irony isn't lost on me that David's betrayal ultimately accelerated my career in ways I never could have planned. The plagiarism scandal brought intense scrutiny to my work, but it also brought attention from the right people at the right time. The retraction and subsequent investigation established my credibility so thoroughly that venture capitalists and research institutions knew they could trust both my integrity and my innovation. Today, I run the Rodriguez Institute for Accessible Energy, a research facility dedicated to developing renewable technology for underserved communities. We employ over 200 people, including many young scientists who remind me daily why fighting for the truth was worth every sleepless night during that investigation. My parents visited last week, touring our new laboratory complex in Tucson. As we walked through the testing facilities where teams work on next-generation solar innovations, my mother stopped in front of a wall displaying letters from communities we've helped. "Elena," she said quietly, "we always worried you were reaching for something too big to grasp. We never realized you were reaching for something too important to let go." Sometimes people ask me if I ever regret trusting David, if I would have protected my research differently knowing what I know now. The honest answer is no. Scientific progress depends on collaboration and open sharing of ideas. If we become so paranoid about protecting our work that we stop communicating with colleagues, we stop advancing knowledge altogether. The key is documentation, vigilance, and surrounding yourself with people who share your commitment to integrity. David could steal my research because I trusted him completely, but he couldn't steal my ability to generate new ideas, my work ethic, or my passion for solving important problems. Those qualities will always belong to me alone. Now, when I speak to young researchers facing their own challenges with academic politics or ethical dilemmas, I tell them what that experience taught me. Your ideas are only as strong as your ability to defend them, but your character is what determines whether they're worth defending in the first place. Up next, you've got 2 more standout stories right on your screen. If this one hit the mark, you won't want to pass these up. Just click and check them out.